Hello, welcome to episode 7 of the Mindful Bullhorn. I'm your host, Justin Wojdyla, CMO at Borshoff, where it's our purpose to empower brands and make an impact that enrich people's lives. Just a quick reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. You can also find the Mindful Bullhorn on your favorite podcast platform like Apple and Spotify. Today, we're connecting with Nick Wojdyla, a digital marketing and transformation leader for Fortune 500 companies like Cummins and Belden. We can't wait to get into it with Nick to learn more about the current technology landscape and the future of digital for brands, marketers, and businesses. Let's go. Hey, Nick. Welcome to the program.
Hey,
good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a lot about digital and digital transformation today, and really excited to get into the conversation. But before we do, I'd love to hear from you. What is one of your very first memories of a real piece of innovative digital technology that really left an impact on you?
Yeah, I would say mobile devices. Back in 2005, 6, 7, whenever the iPhone came out, and it was widely adopted, and everyone now had this computer in their pocket. Like, it changed the game completely with how you would go about marketing and sales, and think about all the software and apps. So now you had, you can text people, push notifications through the apps, the geofencing targeting you could do. Yeah. I mean, that really, that changed the game, and it really made people start thinking, from a software and application standpoint, all the cool things you could do now, because everyone you had 24/7 access to people. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good one. Even, for us in the advertising world as well, just rethinking how we design and the user experience specifically for mobile first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where do you think your love of technology and really solving problems through digital mediums started? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I don't know if I can pinpoint where it came from. I mean, I'm naturally curious. When I was younger, I would, build PCs and dabble with the hardware stuff. I did some graphic design. So, now you're using Photoshop and these softwares. And I think even in high school, took some coding classes like CSS, and didn't really wasn't my favorite thing. It was cool. But then I think just, the fact that most people at that time didn't really understand how the technology worked. They knew how to use it, but they didn't know how to make it. They didn't understand what was going happening behind the curtain, right? And so I was naturally curious about that. So as I was kind of looking into that and figuring it out and learning that, I also kind of saw it as an opportunity of not a lot of people know this, so I should probably, there might be something here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in some of your roles, really leading digital transformation, in a lot of ways, change management and how things are done, both on the sales side, marketing side, but also operations and creating new workflows and efficiencies across large companies, large enterprise companies. So for our audience, what does digital transformation mean?
Yeah, so I mean, transformation is typically, the leapfrogging of some sort of evolution that would have organically happened over time, right? So most things evolve and change year over year, but to me, transformation is going from stage 3 to 10. You're accelerating that natural evolution by investing resources and people into the ideas, and then the digital part is just because that's the day and age we live in, where everything's more or less everything's digital. So by default, it's digital transformation as opposed to non-digital transformation. So yeah, I think that's it's a big deal. But there's kind of two aspects of transformation from my mindset. One is you're doing that leapfrogging because you're trying to catch up to something, your competitors or the space. And then the second one is you're already caught up and you're trying to put a further distance between you and the competitors. And that's kind of the funner side of it, right? Already being kind of in the front of the pack, so to speak, and then transforming further.
Yeah.
So it's harder for them to catch up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, I think a lot about digital transformation more from an internal perspective and just helping with the entire operations of a company, the data that you get. But the way you've talked about in terms of making it a competitive, creating a competitive advantage and a differentiator for a company makes a lot of sense. So you had mentioned that leapfrog effect, right? From a lot of companies maybe being at a 3, how do you get to a 10? In your experience and just observations with where technology and business is today, where do you think most companies sit on that spectrum?
As far as
just where they are, 10 is where they need to be in terms of digital transformation. And
yeah, I mean, it's all over the board. I mean, certain companies have different challenges. I know data is a challenge for a lot of people or a lot of companies. So also the challenge of like assessing the situation is a lot of that's behind the curtain. And unless you work for that company, you really have no idea how, well or unwell their operations are, right? Because I've seen companies where marketing and brand, like they seem like they have it together, and then when you talk to someone who works there, it's all duct taped on the back end. It's not really that transformative, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
So why is this change so critical today?
Well, like I said, the rate, that evolution I was talking about is just exponential now with the technology, right? Especially with AI and all these things like that. So you certainly have to do it at a minimum to play catch up to the technology. And if not, then you're likely no longer going to be in business at some point, right? At some point, you can't go from 3 to 100. There's like a certain delta where it's like the gap is too far.
Well, I think that transitions nicely to my next question, and you may have even answered it. So businesses that just fail to do what you're doing, leading as a chief digital officer, really owning transformation across the company, for companies that fail to adopt, what's going to happen to them?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go under or get acquired by someone who has, and they'll just use your assets, right, as far as their organization goes. So, you really have to, at a minimum, transform enough to be at the front of the pack. You don't have to be the first one, but the front of the pack. But ideally, the companies who are continuing to transform beyond that, you create that buffer for yourself. Then you can kind of, it's again, if you're like running a marathon and you have so much distance between you and whoever's in second, like you can slow down from time to time and like set your own pace and not have to worry about it. So
well, so are there some brands or companies or maybe individual technology innovators right now that are really creating that distance from who's behind them? What are some companies or brands that are doing a really good job with not only just transformation, but just really leveraging digital to their advantage, whether it's their marketing, their ops, their sales?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is not so much sales and marketing related, but you think about like Tesla or SpaceX, they're, again, ones that are already kind of ahead and like continuing to go further. So you think about like the rocket ship that they recently launched and like it re-landed and it can be reused like an airplane. Like that's going to put them in, like who else can do that, right? And then you think about the Tesla cars, which to me aren't really cars. They're data collection devices. They have all these cameras on them and sensors, and they're mapping our roads and finding every pothole and cone and all these things. And you just think about all the data that is being accumulated there, like what they can do with it, licensing it out, and all of that technology. Like that's interesting stuff. And the fact that even Tesla, like I don't think they do any marketing. Like the product's so great and all these things that they don't really have to do the marketing.
I think you're exactly right. I heard somewhere, one of my social media feeds, Elon was being interviewed about it, and he's spent $0 on advertising. So,
right. Yeah. Just kind of word of mouth.
And that's awesome. Yeah. So as a chief digital officer at enterprise level companies, what does that mean? What does your role look like as you're building your team? What are some of the KPIs, the goals that you're hoping to achieve? Both short term, we talked earlier about planning for 2025, so annual goals, and then looking out 3 and 5 years.
Yeah, so we really our main responsibility is enabling the business. So, right, it all starts with the business objectives for the year, and you usually do like a 3-year plan, strategic plan. And so you understand all the things that the business needs to do to essentially make money. And then in order for them to do those things, they need to be enabled through data, technology, maybe updated processes, et cetera. So we kind of that top-down, I guess, maybe approach, right? So that's one aspect. And then we also spend some time kind of innovation hub model where we start thinking way ahead, 5 years, 10 years down the road. So nothing that the business is going to be requesting because they don't know it exists. It's like when there was horse and buggies, like we were thinking about cars. No one was asking for a car. It wasn't even a thing. So we're constantly thinking about 10 years out. What do we need to start doing now to position ourselves? Meanwhile, in the short term, 1 to 2 year period, taking care of the business, making sure they're enabled through data and technology. So that's kind of the primary focus. And we split it up even into strategic initiatives, which typically have higher investment. There's a clear start and end date to those projects. And then there's more operational stuff that just happens all the time, data quality, and for companies that do mergers and acquisitions all the time, like you have to bring those companies and those data and systems together. So we kind of split it that way. And that's like our primary kind of focus.
So who are you partnering with internally, or how? I mean, what you described there requires a lot of change, a lot of shifts in thinking, shift in culture. The way things have always been done are going to be obsolete. And, you're trying to move the needle across these very large companies, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 employees.
Yeah.
How are you doing that? How are you communicating? How are you getting people to advocate for change?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag. So certain functions or groups they want the change for whatever that might be, right? So it's how do you enable them to do those things in a timely fashion? Because they also aren't privy to all the behind the scenes prerequisites that need to happen before they can get this tangible item, right? So some of it is just setting expectations with like, hey, this can be done, but it's not going to be done in a month. It takes a year or whatever the case might be. And then you have other groups that, and this happens at any company where there's, I don't want to say it's like resistant to change, but most people are instinctively cautious of change for whatever reason, right? So it's just bringing them along. So having them be part of the effort and have them be part of the idea generation and, allow them to poke holes in things and all of that stuff. And then as you develop, the platform, the system, the process, whatever the thing might be, having them test it and all these things. So at the end of it, they're advocates of what was made. And you're not just like handing them the keys to something that they didn't necessarily ask for or like feel like they need.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about there is critical for any culture to really thrive, is giving employees a voice, iterating with them involved in the process, listening, providing feedback, and just making them really feel like they are part of this change, and then you can build advocacy that way. So
Absolutely.
Smart. Yeah. Let's jump into AI a little bit and machine learning. So I know you have some background leading, from a digital transformation perspective, but leading a lot of the data collection and analytics, helping enterprise level marketing teams understand what's working, what's not, creating those systems for them. How is AI changing the marketing world?
I mean, it has the potential to change it in a lot of ways. I think it's still pretty early. Some of it's overhyped a little bit. I think people are fearful of things that the AI can't do today well enough to like take your job if you're in marketing, right? So I think the creative side's one example. Like AI isn't quite there yet. It's good at brainstorming and helping you come up with ideas, but ultimately a person can definitely make better creative outputs than the AI at this time. I think if you think about all of the mundane, repetitive task work that like a marketer maybe has to do, that stuff that AI can do pretty easily and seamlessly, and then kind of open up the marketing team to then do the more challenging, creative, fun, strategic stuff.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's probably the same across the board of any function, marketing or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, at the agency, we kind of see the exact same thing. Research to inform a campaign, right? As we're writing our briefs, trying to learn as much as we can about an industry or that industry's audiences and competitive set. And the research process is critically important to really find, these insights that we can use to create a campaign that's going to be meaningful and really stick out. And I used to take a lot of time, focus groups and surveys and reading white papers and summarizing this and pulling out those nuggets that are actually useful to our creative team. And we just still do some of that. But, with some smart prompt engineering and tools like ChatGPT, you can get a lot of that information pretty quickly, and it's all summarized and focused, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah, I think with the copywriting stuff too, right? It's good at brainstorming ideas, but when you think about like personalization, like on a website, you do so many variations of the copy and imagery and things like that, and so being able to have the starting point of the copy, let's say, and then ask a tool to kind of rewrite it for different personas, and not that you would just copy and paste what it gave you, but like it's like 70% there, 80% there. So the speed at which you can crank out the variations of content, especially for personalization, I think is pretty cool. It's a good accelerator.
I sat in on this OpenAI webinar, I think it was last week, and they were kind of demoing some of the new features within ChatGPT. And they had this really cool use case where, if you're creating a webinar and you're trying to create your agenda and your talking points, you could upload your list of all your attendees that maybe come through, through Eventbrite or whatever you're using. And it's going to have, their emails and their job titles and descriptions, and just through some clever prompting, what would these job titles be the most interested in learning in a webinar about ABC? Generate all these ideas for you. And I thought that was a pretty cool use case.
That's a really cool use case. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we touched on this earlier. You had mentioned it earlier about just creativity and writing and design. AI is probably not there yet. So what do you think? Marketing, but maybe anything within a business. Where are humans needed? What can't AI replace today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that answer will change as time goes on with what AI can and can't do. I mean, now the obvious thing is, unless you have AI plus like robotics, like anything that's like physically doing stuff, you kind of need both of those. But if you're just talking the software side of AI, I think, the creative side, there's like a layer of like human judgment. Because again, AI is just really recognizing patterns and finding kind of themes and things, and it's good at replicating what we do based on what we feed it.
Right.
So it's really tough to come up truly with its own variation of something, right? It's really just kind of like a copycat. And it's really good at it, and it can process a lot of data. But the other thing is it's only as good as the data. It's just like if you had a kid and you're teaching it math wrong, like it's just not going to be good at math, right? So you got to teach it the right things and got to give it context. I think the creative side is just not there. I've tried various tools, like even you think something as simple as PowerPoint, like, put your date on the slide, but then tell it to make it look nice and give it context, and it's nowhere close to what you would want it to look like. You still need a human.
For sure.
And I think any AI, no matter the use case, you always need a human in the loop. There's like a layer of just ethics and just, again, that judgment piece. So I would say, AI is more of an assistant. So you're going to want to check the work, right? So let it do the repetitive tasks. You might have more challenging tasks that you want to give it, but I don't see a world yet where we're going to just like automate, like let it go and just not check it and just let it run, let it push something into production or whatever the case is. No time soon anyway.
Yeah. Do you think that's possible long term?
Oh, for sure. I mean, anything's possible long term, but who knows? I mean, it's hard to predict these things. I mean, the one example is like, if you think about, I forgot, maybe like 5 years ago, like remember the whole blockchain thing, and like companies were big on it for a while of like, we have to incorporate blockchain into something, and companies sunk a lot of money and time into it, and like I've never heard of it in the last year. Like it's kind of done. It didn't go anywhere.
There's been a few of those over the past 3 or 4 years.
So it's hard to like understand what's real. So I think AI is for sure going to be around, but it's just like, what will it settle down into? I think most of the stuff you hear about AI now is theory. Like you'll hear about like, can you imagine, as soon as someone says like, think about this, or can you imagine this? It's just an idea.
Right.
They don't have an AI that can do that thing just yet, typically.
Yeah.
The stuff it can actually do is, pretty simple. Like it can write an email subject line, and it could, Microsoft Copilot and Outlook can like draft you an email response. Like it could do that type of stuff, no problem. But to tell it to, to take images and video of you and I and tell it to make a 30-minute podcast, like it's not going to work.
Yeah,
it's just not there. You know?
Totally agree. What are some examples of new tech that you've been playing around with outside of AI that we should be paying attention to?
I mean, AI has been the big one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no real new tech on my radar just yet outside of AI, obviously. I mean, it's more of simplifying the technology. So you think about like Salesforce and all these other software applications, and there's really been more of a focus on simplifying the UI UX layer of these tools, because they can get quite complex kind of out of the box, and that can hurt the adoption, right, and the usage, and especially if you have a more complex selling process and you got to do multiple steps and you're more involved directly with an end customer. There's a lot of things you need to do. Salesforce can do it, but if or any tools, and it just have to be Salesforce, Oracle, et cetera. But if you don't focus on the UI UX piece of it, then you really kind of lose. The change management piece kind of hurts. The adoption kind of hurts. But I think now, back to the AI piece, it's kind of layering that where appropriate across these other technologies, right? It's not so much like AI standalone in the corner, and then you have your other tools over here. It's kind of like a blanket over everything to some degree. That's
an interesting kind of perspective and question about just the crossover of AI technology, but then overlapping that with the overall UX and UI and user experience. And I don't know, again, just in that OpenAI webinar I was talking about, they had another use case for how with prompting and data you can create landing pages, right, directly, because ChatGPT is generating images now, and it can do landing pages and give you the HTML and all of that. But I never really considered, like, is it able to actually create the meaningful user experience? Is this supposed to be a hardworking, landing page that's supposed to be optimized for conversion rates and maybe through some crafty prompting, you can tell exactly what to do to work the hardest for conversion. But I don't know how good AI would be at UX and UI.
Yeah, it kind of struggles. It's like if you had someone like straight out of school, like taking a stab at it. Like, it's not bad, but it's not, professional enough. So I mean, that's kind of, I think the other angle of that is with AI is, okay, so let's say it did do that well, and so it kind of augmented some of the jobs that did that. Well, now you need new jobs of prompt engineering and oversight of the AI, because if it stops working or it starts going in a weird direction, like you got to have someone over there. So now you just made new jobs that are like more difficult to do, more technology, data scientist types of jobs, and then you reduced a creative job in that scenario, right? So there's always going to be this like give and take.
Are you seeing in your work with agencies and other marketing tech platforms, where do you think the industry is right now in terms of keeping up with AI and its capabilities? Are we using it well? Is there more opportunity to be leveraged?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. I think some companies are just shoving it into their platform, right? To say, two things. One, they say it's AI and it's not. It's just like machine learning or some pretty basic algorithm. So it's almost like a brand component where it's powered by AI, but it's really not. There's no AI to be seen. Or on the flip side, they're just kind of forcing the AI to do something that doesn't really add value. And that's something that, I always talk about with my team and others. It's, start with the business case first and try to solve the problem, because AI it may be overkill for what you're trying to do. Don't start with AI and being like, how can I use this? It's like picking up a hammer and be like, where can I use this hammer? It's like, well, do you need a hammer? Maybe you need a screwdriver. Go grab a screwdriver. So it's kind of the same concept.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, wrapping up here, I wanted to ask you one final question, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. Very insightful. Getting to hear from you as a very experienced chief digital officer and all the work that you're doing in digital transformation. What impact overall do you hope that digital and technology and this transformation we've been talking about can really, what kind of impact can it make on the world?
I mean, I hope it just makes maybe two answers to that. So from a customer's lens, just an improved experience, just an easier process to buy, and just transparency and kind of what you're buying, services, software, products, whatever the case may be. I think internally, it reduces the friction is those operational processes to make products and sell and do all that stuff. And so, if you do a really good job at all those things, like at the highest level, it's less stressful for the people involved, which is a better quality of life. And like, it kind of all boils up to just like easier life for people,
I love it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where are some places that people could go to learn more about some cool technology that could be impactful in their life, especially leading businesses? What resources? What are you reading? Blogs, thought leadership?
Yeah, Harvard Business has some cool articles that they post from time to time. I mean, Gartner and Forrester are posting things all the time.
For sure.
And then sometimes, Google will have like free training on AI. And some of it's like educational, but some of it's like pretty in the weeds on stuff. So there's a lot of good free resources out there. I think you have to look them up and maybe ask ChatGPT kind of where they should go. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, this is awesome, Nick. I really appreciate the conversation. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I'm confident our audiences have learned a lot. So again, thanks so much. And to all of our audience watching and listening today, we really appreciate it. Be sure to check out this episode and previous episodes on YouTube or all your other favorite places where you can find your podcasts like Spotify and Apple. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks a lot,
Very
Nick.
good. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for having me.